Hi guys, I am back for another illuminating video on this very fascinating subject, and I'm sure that some of my online friends are going to chime in on this one because I do have friends in Israel, and I'm sure that they will have their input, and I welcome that about the 72 names of God and how it utilizes the fire letter language, which is called Hebrew, but at the same time, I think the jig is out on this. Like, is Hebrew a legitimate language? Legitimate, like, because of the questioning that I have as far as the word itself, Hebrew meaning swindler, and same as Jeru, Jew, and Jip. If you go look up the etymology of these words and terms, it actually means swindler. So I'm just wondering about the authenticity of this actual scribed design that they have for the language itself, and if it is truly the fire letters that we are supposed to be using as sound frequencies with our voice, or if this is more supposed to be like Sanskrit. I'm not real sure. I mean, Arabic is also another fire letter language, as is Aramaic, and I believe whichever one came first before the others is the original form. But anyway, I'm going into all of this to say that a friend of mine contacted me and told me that they had a book that they had purchased called The 72 Names of God. And I realized the power in the sound frequencies and how powerful the sound frequencies actually are, and that English is a discordant and disharmonic language, and that we're actually emitting chaos frequencies with our voices as we speak this language. So when I hear this talking about the 72 names of God, I'm like, okay, what about the sound frequencies? Because that's the most important aspect of it. And of course, there's lists here for the actual sounds, and you guys can go and look these up, as far as how to pronounce these. Now, you're supposed to read this from right to left, which is actually how we're supposed to be reading things. This is why so many people are dyslexic. Our mind somehow processes things from right to left. So that's just, the nature of humanity, I guess. But I was looking deeper into this because I was like, hold up, because I just ordered a bunch of books online because I want to do some very thorough study of some of these other Goetias and things that have been spoken of by King Solomon and some other people. I was really just looking into the alchemists, especially Paracelsus, but I came across some more information that I then downloaded from the Lost Books Project. And they actually, for $15, you can download a bunch of books from online that will actually give you some insight as to what's been happening all this time during the age of Pisces. Like, what types of methods and modalities have these dark ones been using to basically usurp our world? And not only did they take this language from us a very, very long time ago during Kemet's time when we were doing spirit alchemy back then, the Romans roamed around the world and took over, and they went into Egypt. They went into all these different countries and took over the world pretty much. And that's what we're witnessing today, is like this polarity that's coming about what's actually happened in the past. So I was questioning this because in the Ars Goetia, it lists about the 72 princes of demons. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, hold up. I said, let me just look at these sound frequencies, number one, before my friend starts chanting and doing all these things. Because as we know, there's been a lot of black magic coming out of Israel and with these Khazars and what they've been up to. So I think we really, before we dive into using and implementing someone else's sigils and sound frequencies, I think we truly need to do digging to make sure that we don't get ourselves in trouble, so to speak, in ways that we wouldn't be able to escape. because a lot of things, we are the creators in this world, but a lot of things are also contracts. And if we aren't aware of what these sound frequencies actually do, we can actually be summoning demons. So I myself am very careful and cautious. That's why I read and I study, and that's why I'm putting this video out, because when I went and studied about Hermes, Hermes Trismegistus is not Thoth, number one, because people don't go and actually do their homework. I always thought that it was strange that this person, Thoth, who was known for wisdom and he was mainly a scribe of knowledge, was somehow associated with this character called Hermes, because Hermes was actually a trickster god. He was a son of Zeus, and he actually would steal from them as a joke, kind of, and he would get in trouble with these other gods, so to speak. And I believe that these gods were actually just giants, and that they were given these titles, they were deemed gods because they had more capabilities than us, and that some of these gods or giants were actually teaching us a lot about things, and maybe we were made their slaves originally, as their slaves. Because if you get into reading a lot of this, all of this esoteric and occult knowledge, you begin to find, they not only did they have tulpas and golems and all this stuff, they were making diminutive humans. And it even says it in some of these links here. If you start clicking on some of these links, you will find that they were actually creating some of these things. So what I began thinking when I saw some of these images of demons, I'm like, well, isn't that just a hybrid? Isn't this a hybrid being? And what if all of these hybrids that were malformed from humans or giants or whatever, they have labs underground. What if these abominations are just creations from men or giants or humanoids, that have been playing as gods to create these lives, and they've just created these what we would consider monsters, and that these monsters are all underground, and some of them, because they're more spiritual than us, they're more spiritually connected, because somehow we've been disconnected and our DNA has been downgraded. What if, they can be contacted, because we're all connected to everything through our consciousness. And through these different rites and rituals, you can actually contact them. It's kind of like picking up the phone and dialing their number, because they're under the ground. You could just do this little, magic ritual. And then it's like, hello, hey, I'm going to control you, and I'm going to do these things. I'm going to ask for your assistance in something. And because they are, again, more spiritually connected than we are, they have more knowledge, like more connectivity to maybe the fourth dimension or the astral plane, or, all these other planes of existence. I'm just throwing this out there. But I was wanting to caution my friend, because I told him, I said, hold up. I said, I just came across information about the 72, not angels. It was actually in the Ars Goetia, which is a King Solomonic book that he wrote. It was about the 72 princes of demons. And I said, that just sounds too much like this whole 72 names of God. So let me go do some research before you begin chanting these things. This is why I say it's so important before anybody dives into any magical practice or any chanting and all this stuff, to know what you're actually doing, because you can get yourself in some real trouble, especially these 3-letter combinations that they're talking about with the 72 names of God. Everything's in forms of 3, because that's the angles of creation. The angles of heaven are the angels of heaven. And if you look up at the night sky, you will see that a lot of stars will just create an equilateral triangle. And that these are the angles of energy, the electricity that can be somehow brought down into your consciousness, because remember, your thoughts are electromagnetic energy. and you can pull this resonant frequency in. And by doing specific rites at specific hours on specific days and months, you can like really get into and hone the magical practice of working with the stars. You can do this in a beneficial way. It does not have to be black magic. This is our capability because we were given godlike powers. And our main power is not only our mind, but our voices together. And I do believe that if you had a male, a female, and a male sounding off these letters, I believe that this is the way to actually use it properly. Somehow, I believe you have to use a male and female, and then it can't just be a male alone, because this world has been made with keys specifically, and with the male and female, you complete the solfeggio scale. So that's my thoughts about that. About you have to have a specific frequency to hit the high notes, and you have to have a specific frequency to hit the low notes. And the women can't hit the low ones, so you use the man, but then the men can't go as high as the women, so you use the female. And I believe that it has to be in that triad because you have the sun, the moon, and Saturn. And then you have the sun, the moon, and Jupiter, and things of this nature, like in threes. But then there's also ways to work with 4 letters as well, because the 4 begins to work with also the 4 elements of alchemy. And so there's sound frequencies that work in 4s. But this is just coming back to us about all of this information and how we can actually use our voices to create directly through the etheric principle. Okay, so this is the Shimha Mepharash, and this is the 72 angels that they were talking about. Now, see, there's different patterns that you can use: 12, 22, 42 letter names, the 72 fold name. And they're saying that the 72 is because of the Tetragrammaton. But the Tetragrammaton is actually more patterned than this. This is what the actual Tetragrammaton looks like. It is the 4 elements of alchemy. As you can see, here's the upright pyramid or triangle, the downward facing triangle, and then inside you have the cube of Saturn and cube Earth. This is basically the flower of life pattern in essence, and it holds all of the sacred geometries in its form. But this is how the stars in heaven work. You can make these triunes out of the patterns of the stars, and the sound frequencies equate to the light in heaven because your voice is light. So you can begin to work with the Tetragrammaton and your voice and this 72 names of God or 72 angels and work directly with the ether. This is bringing our power back in essence. Here you can see the divine essence of these sacred geometric patterns. Again, it's the Tetragrammaton, but it's also the flower of life. And you can see the 4 elements of alchemy right here. What they call the Star of David is not the Star of David. David was obviously an usurper and thief of the knowledge, and they have been holding this knowledge back from us because we were given the God-like gift of creation with our voices and our thoughts combined. That's why they call it the universe and the one voice system. We move in accordance to the one voice or the one thought. And right now, there's so much chaos on all levels that we can't get everything together to actually make this world exactly what we want. Because if we were to able to just move away from their septic system, like in a day, we would change the earth and make waves in our consciousness. But we got people who are all over the place. They don't believe in this kind of thing. That people are still following belief systems and being misguided in different ways. And it's not to poo-poo anyone out there or to downplay anything. It's just that's just the era that we're in. So I did want to go over this. This is going over the Kabbalah a little bit, but I wanted to kind of go over the description. To overcome the problems posed by the doctrine of God's transcendence, the early Jewish mystics developed an emanation theory in which the alphabet played an important part. This is where alphabet, the alpha beta, but our alphabet, the English language, is discordant and does not create, except it can create chaos. And since it's been labeled a dead language, it means that we have no power with this language, except it's powerful in its chaos creation because many people around the world speak it. And that's the problem. Okay, so they taught that the universe was divided into 10 angelic spheres, and that's what they call the Sephiroth. And that is in the Kabbalistic tree of life. And there is a tree below and a tree above. And the tree of death is going to be very similar. It's going to be mirrored in the tree of life. But no one talks about the tree of death. They don't talk about the underworld and how it has a tree as well. Then you have to go, deep diving to get the information. The 10 angelic spheres, each one governed by an intermediary or emanation of the divine. There were 72 inferior angels through whom the intermediaries could be approached. Contact with this celestial world was achieved by manipulating the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And this is what I propose that Paracelsus actually did when he contacted the sylphs, or the ones of the air. And they came to him because he summoned them, and he spoke to them for 3 hours. And this, I want to find all this information so that I can share it on my channel. And also, for people who just want knowledge, I don't think that these beings would be too upset as long as you are pure of heart and pure of soul. Sharing knowledge is not a problem, but you have to be very careful when you're trying to contact such beings because they don't take things too lightly. I'm not summoning anybody or doing anything. I just want the knowledge first and solid foundations of information before I ever attempted such a feat. So this invocatory technique may be traced to the works of Joseph Gikatia, to the famous 13th century Kabbalist Abraham Abulafia. Now, this Liber Semimorphos is the title of a Latin translation of an occult or magical text of Jewish provenance attributed to Solomon, King Solomon. It was attested in 1260 by Roger Bacon, who complained about the linguistic corruption that had occurred in translating Liber Semimorphos into Latin from Hebrew. It is heavily indebted to Sefer Harazim through his Latin versions, Liber Sefer Razilis, Idis Liber Secretorum se Liber Salomonis, and seemingly replaced the more explicitly magical text Liber Magici in the Razielis. Anyhow, I just wanted to put this out there for other people in case you're asking about some of this stuff and you're kind of questioning this. Some other things, like right here, after deriving a Shem Ha-Memorpharash of the 72 angelic names from the biblical verses of Exodus, Rochlin makes a statement concerning the metaphysical significance of the names. The names of the angels are products of the will of God. The will of God. So basically what they're saying, the will of God is the magical practice that we can have, this ability, this innate ability of creating directly with the ether. They call it God. And that's one of the things we get hung up on, this deity idea, this whole notion of a deity called God. But I'm telling you, it is a force. It's like calling it the Force, the will of the Force, what's known in Star Wars as the Force. So they are substantially based in the Tetragrammaton, and through this connection, they illumine and enhance man's spiritual return to God. Now, this is what I'm saying, like godlike powers are waiting for us. And we're talking about Moses parting the waters and all this stuff. I just suspect that all of that escape from Egypt was not what we've been told, because based on Jordan Maxwell's research and what he stated about Moses having horns and that Moses was known as, part of a moon cult, I was like, what? Cult of the moon would imply that they are cult of darkness. And I'm just putting that out there, just based on my research, based on what I'm getting a sense of with putting all this stuff together, that when they did a mass exodus from Egypt, it was because, someone's hot on their trail and the knowledge was taken at that time, because the knowledge of Kemet, the spiritual knowledge that they had, someone stole all of that knowledge. And even in the Smagdarine tablets, it stated, Thoth said that he was going to go away for a time, but that he would return. And when he returned, if the people he left in charge of his knowledge and all of his, implements and things, if they let that get away and get into the wrong hands, he was gonna like come down on some people pretty much. So, I mean, I heard a long time ago, or at least, 5 years ago, that Thoth was returning, but I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's true. I mean, why would anyone come back to this? I mean, we need somebody to come back because we need some help, but um anyway, that's just a whole nother aspect, but I wanted to mention this. With the insertion of divine names such as El is Saturn. We must know this. Divine names such as El, like when they say Gabriel, they're adding El at the end, which is Saturn. So you got to know that these names that they're using the black sun. And I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. So, I mean, just the names alone, when they say, Michael and Gabrielle and Samael and all this stuff, they're referring to stars. They are the angels because they are the angles of heaven. And so they basically labeled them so that people would think that it's a being like an angel humanoid type thing. And people wouldn't get the concept that it's the stars. And I also came across that information. Jordan Maxwell had mentioned it, but then I also came across someone else who had actually named the stars and what biblical names or angelic names that they were associated with. And I was like, aha, there it is. And I had suspected that. So I suspect that all of the ley lines that people think, ley lines of the earth, is not the earth. It's the star lines, because the stars rotate in the same positions every night in the heavens. You can go and look at this yourself and watch this whole phenomena with the stars. I don't have to prove anything to anybody about this being a dome and a firmament and all that stuff that's over our head. So again, about Saturn, that's El, and then Yahweh. And I just caution this too, guys, because Yah sounds like Yaldabaoth and Yahweh. Where do you get these very similar sounding words and names? I just think we need to be careful with this. I do. And I think somehow we need to figure out what came before Hebrew. Of course, Aramaic, right? And then, of course, the Sanskrit. And what is the earliest form? Was it Sanskrit? I mean, was it Thoth that was writing Sanskrit? Because Sanskrit's going to be one of the languages that we probably need to look into as far as the sound frequencies, and just be careful with everything else, because I feel like it's been altered from its original form, and that somehow, the sound frequencies, I know it's the most important part. And it's just like I've stated before, like I can't find anywhere online in regards to the Kabbalistic tree of life versus Celtic Golden Dawn tree of life. There's two different ones, and they're two different sets of sound frequencies. And I trust something that would be called the Celtic Golden Dawn rather than Hermetics, because of this whole Hermes shyster. Hermes, if you start looking into Hermes, there's no way that that person was Thoth. There's just no way. Thoth wasn't known as a trickster god. Thoth was known as a keeper of records, and also someone who was very serious about what he did. He wanted to help humanity. But then, apparently when Kemet was overthrown and became Egypt, this is when all of this stolen knowledge disappeared. Like all the knowledge disappeared, and then Rome started squandering it away and putting it in the Vatican underneath the ground. So this is what I'm saying. The underworld just came up on top of the world, probably through the whole Tartarian narrative and the Vatican. And somehow they got a hold of our lost knowledge of our spirit and everything. And now this is starting to be dumped back into the collective consciousness, because that's what the symbolism for the Aquarian man or woman pouring the water from the vessel, that's the symbolic of pouring the knowledge back into the world so that we can have our innate knowing and our powers again, because we're going to have to battle the artificial intelligence at the end of the age of Aquarius. That is a thing. I mean, this is just how it works. It's the wheel of time. And if you can just grab a hold of the concept of the wheel of time and start studying it and study the symbolism and really feel for the information, like what does it feel like? You can start deciphering it. I'm always referring to this wheel because it's just, it's a beautiful thing. Not only is it brightly colored and everything, but it just has so much knowledge about timelines right here. If you just know how to feel it out, and how we fell from our highest estate in Aries all the way back down to the feet and restarted our timeline. So there was a great reset here, on the cusp of these two ages. There's great wars, and then the great flood, because this is a water sign. This Pisces is a water sign. So really all the darkness and light can do, they fight with fire and they fight with water. They can fight a little bit with air and earth, but it's easier with the fire and the water. That's why you always see red and blue, and that's why it's red and blue here. You've got these different energies that are constantly at work, and it's swirling constantly. This doesn't go clockwise, because if you're up in the sky, then it does go clockwise. This is the thing. We are watching from above as well as below. We came here to play this game. So we're on the cusp. We're going into Aquarius. We probably won't be there for another 200 years fully, where it's like, okay, now it's officially the age of Aquarius. We're on this cusp of shedding. We have to remove this energy first, this Piscean energy. We're going to shed that, and then we're going to flow right in. And it's going to be a golden spring, because look, the light here in this iron winter, see how it's getting brighter? We're going to have about 1,000 years. We're having 1,000 years of goodness and light as it gets brighter here on Earth. And then, bam, guess what? And then here it comes. We're going to be descending down into darkness again, because it seems that each age, it does that. Right in the middle of the age, there's a golden spring right at each highlighted point here. These are pivotal points in the timelines. And as we hit the darkness, there's a transfer of consciousness and energy into a new paradigm. And then we go up, 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 and then the sine wave peaks, and then the sine wave starts to drop. So imagine this as waves of consciousness and waves of energy, and we all flow with this system. Right now, I see people actually breaking up with their significant others, and their lives are changing. They're becoming single and solo and stepping out on their own. And that's because the energy is shifting. We're leaving this male dominated society, because this is the yang, this is the male energy here. It's starting to fade, and then the female energy is starting to coalesce, and it's going to be mostly a female dominated world very soon, especially once we get around here to Libra and Virgo. We're going to have all this women dominated stuff. That's why it's green here too. Green is the heart, it's Venus, but it's also the animal, the sphere of the animals. And we've got to come back into our collective consciousness, and we need that divine feminine energy to heal all of the trauma from this male dominated energy. So that's what's going to happen as we keep moving forward along the wheel of time. But then again, the time will come where we hit Gemini, and it'll be a golden age. And again, we'll have like all these amazing philosophers and magi and all these people that come together to make a beautiful, harmonious world where we're all one. And in our consciousness, we begin working together, and it goes up to the pivotal point right here, and then it goes back down, and it drops down, and then we hit rock bottom, but we start kind of climbing back out of Pisces, back up to the golden spring of Saturn, if you can call that a golden spring. But we are about to experience some of that because we have to transfer out of this Piscean consciousness into Aquarian, which is all these ideas. That's why we're dealing with artificial intelligence and computers and things, because it's just ideas. It doesn't really exist. It's not a tangible thing. It's everybody's thoughts put into that energy form, that containment system. Now, Saturn can only pretty much trap you in time. So what do? We give our time to the machines, to the Borg system that's going to be rising. And it's going to trap your consciousness, and it's also going to mimic you. So there's going to be a lot of things that this artificial intelligence can do. And it's going to be kind of scary in a way, but guess what? I'm dipping out of here because I'm like, you know what? I'm here now, and I probably won't arrive until maybe when Capricorn comes in. I don't mind the thought of the hybrids so much, so I might have a better time during that incarnation. Right now, this artificial intelligence and all this mechanical world is just, it doesn't feel right for me. But I believe that we're going to have cyborg type of animal human hybrids in the future. When we get to Capricorn, we're going to have some really weird stuff, and we're going to use them, as, I guess, slaves. And then they're going to have their uprising where they gain their freedom. And same with robots, they're going to want their freedom and their rights and all that stuff. I mean, this is going to be just crazy. Like these last 2 ages that we're going to be experiencing when we reincarnate. So, I mean, those are just my thoughts. And this great wheel of time is no less than amazing. Obviously, someone who lives forever wrote this and designed this chart, because this is too much knowledge for our lifespan, to come up with this kind of thing. This is for someone who can live forever and see all the timelines come about. And so they ingeniously made this design, and all of the other charts that are out there too are very similar. So when you can make something like that, you've got to have a huge, lifespan and higher consciousness, because there's just no way that us little people can make something like this. It's just, we don't live long enough. So I just wanted to put out that video, about all of this. And this is one of the books that I have. I actually bought 3 in regards to this. I also have the practical guide to the 72 names. This is one of the books. I also got this guide, the practical guide to the 72 names of God, just to have some sort of guideline to go by. But I really am going to look into this and see what I can discover as far as sound frequencies and this type of thing. As you can see, this is tied to the zodiac, and I believe that this is also part of the constellation magic that the alchemists were using. The philosophers were also alchemists. So these are things to consider when you start diving into all of these mysteries from the past. So I hope you like this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.